Adam, hello.
Yeah, hey.
Happy Wednesday. Where am I podcasting with you from?
Yeah, we are in the Cayman Islands. We spent a lot of time in the Caribbean, never been here before. It's beautiful. Here, I'll give you a little view of what we're looking at. Got some cruise ships out there, but anyway, nice day to be alive.
Yeah, that's amazing. The view is a lot better than the view in my living room. That is for sure.
Is it snowing there?
It is It's raining, but the forecast is gloomy, to say the least. Very gloomy. It's like a winter storm warning, the whole shebang.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah, I know. I'm really jealous of your sunshine. Anyway, welcome to the Saratoga Podcast, guys. We are missing Dan today, but we have Adam, and we also have a very special guest, Mayor John Safford, who we're going to bring in a minute. We had a city council meeting last night, so we're going to get into a recap of that. And we just have lots to catch up on, but we are thrilled to have the mayor join us. So Adam, if it's all right with you, I'm just going to bring him right in.
Let's do it.
All right. Mayor Safford.
Well, good afternoon, early afternoon, waiting for the snow.
That's right. That's right. We're so happy to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you.
So
I like being here.
So I have so many questions for you, and there's so much to talk about, but I just wanted to start off with a very kind of general question. You know, I know you've run for mayor before, and you had to have kind of thought about what the experience would be like. How has the first 3 months in office kind of measured up to your expectation of what it would be like to be the mayor of Saratoga Springs?
Well, I mean, it's great. Obviously, what a great privilege it is to have this position and to be able to, I mean, as you can well imagine, it's been just one after another of people that I needed to talk to kind of get caught up on where we are, where we're going. I've met this is a great city. It's because of the people in it. And I've met so many people that people that I knew and people that I haven't known and before. And I'm just so impressed with the people of the city. It'd be hard to explain how impressed I am with the people that I've met with and the people I'm meeting with. So it's a great privilege to be here. Did it measure up to what I thought? Yeah, pretty much. Because I've been doing this for so long, I knew a lot about, and possibly if you wanted to talk about that, how to adjust to a commission form of government as opposed to all the businesses I've run, where you have a lot more, a CEO has a lot more control, over what happens. So that's a new learning experience for me.
Now that you're nearly 100 days in this commission form, there are a lot of pros, a lot of cons. The cons being, as the mayor, you can't just wave your magic wand and have things get done. You need at least 2 other votes. How are you finding that? Is it challenging? Are the other commissioners are they open to working with you? How's that going?
Well, again, having run so much, I was familiar with what this form is. So I came into it understanding that it's very different. And if you recall, as when I'm running, the one thing that I promised was to try and bring civility back to the council, and therefore, if we're getting along as council members, that brings a lot of civility back to City Hall. And I think I've been very successful doing that. But it's because I understand, before I got in, I understood this commission form of government and how dependent it is on being able to communicate effectively and gain trust, among the commissioners. Because that is really, that's the key to this form of government. You hear discussions, that another form might be better. And certainly I've thought of those things. And there are good things about this and very, very trying things about this form of government. But I came in knowing what it was, so I have not overstepped my bounds here, and have worked on cooperation and collaboration with the other members. And I think I've been pretty successful doing that.
Yeah, I will say that, we here at the Saratoga Podcast watch all the city council meetings. I watch the pre-agenda meetings, and you could tell right from the moment you took office that some of the other city council members were really pleasantly surprised and taken aback sometimes that they were allowed to have dialogue and discussion and disagreement in a civilized way, that they were allowed to have that kind of opportunity to have that kind of substantive dialogue at the council table that seemed like it had been kind of denied to them previously.
I think, yes, I've certainly heard that. I mean, and also in City Hall, where we talk a lot more, where we meet each other in our offices, and just have a general good professional relationship that actually filters down to all of the workers here. I mean, the other thing you become very impressed with is how, even though we've changed governments, every time there's an election, there's like this whole change of government that often happens. But yet the people who have been here for a while just keep going, and they do a great job, even under some fairly adverse circumstances. And while they do that under those circumstances, it's a lot better to have all the commissioners talking and working together. It does make it work a lot better. And that's one of the things I promised, and I think I've delivered. It's only 100 days, but I continue to be dedicated to that concept. And the dedication is to a true understanding of what the commission form of government, what its limitations are, and and what we need to do to make it work. So I'm working very hard on that.
Mayor Safford, what would you say to people who would argue? So basically, what I see when I see you in office and at the city council meetings, I see someone who's leading by example in terms of the tone and civility and respect and kindness that you're offering the people around you, whether it be people at the public comment or the people at the city council table with you. But you have been on the receiving end of some pretty vicious public comments in the last couple meetings. And some might say you've been overly nice or overly generous with people, even though they've been aggressive in public comment. How do you feel it's gone with those kind of aggressive public comment moments?
Well, I think that was kind of that's been established. We've become more and more aggressive. The speakers have been, over the last couple of years. And again, civility is not something you enforce. You know what I mean? I mean, you can enforce laws, you can force people to act a certain way, but to be civil is like a philosophy or an ethos that you have to, the way that I see it is that you have to exhibit that first. Mm-hmm. And when you're consistent doing that, your hope is that something will stir something in others, which I think has happened, by the way, with the council. We have outbreaks once in a while, but in general, I think we all treat each other civilly at that table, which wasn't happening before. And I'd like to think that I set an example for that, and we'll continue to do that. But civility starts with you, right? You have to be willing to put it, do it and keep doing it, even though you may not get civility back at first, but you do it with the hope that will cause some people to react, in a better way, so that's what I'm trying to do.
John, or Mayor Safford, do you, now, almost 100 days in now, do you have any initiatives now that you're looking forward to or that you want to accomplish with your time in office? I know, Mayor Kim got the homeless shelter built on the Delphi Street there. Do you have any projects like that you have identified that you would like to see move forward under your administration?
Yes, again, I've talked about both of these in my campaign. One is the planning board. The mayor is in charge of planning and building departments. And we, again, Joanne Kiernan, my deputy, and myself have concentrated on, first of all, recognizing how important their roles are here, especially with regard to new people wanting to set up businesses here or expand their homes here. There's a lot that we're learning their philosophy, but also trying to change the attitude. And it's hard to not be very sympathetic to those folks because every couple of years they have a new manager. It's essentially the deputy mayor who's the manager of that department, and these people have been here for 8, 10, 12 years.
We're talking about the folks in the planning department, just to be clear.
Yes, we're talking about the planning department. So for example, when we came in, it was taking 16 weeks to take a look, at getting a building permit going, even for something very simple like a deck or windows or something. That's down to 6 weeks now. So we've seen a big improvement in that. But that still is not, that's really not standard. It should be even less than that. So we're working on that. And we're also working on the boards so that they're again, within something like this, you can take one or two attitudes. One is you're going to make people meet your standards, or you're going to help people meet the standards. And so we're talking a lot about that. That's very important. If we can get that going and really functioning well within the next a year or so, that will be a big accomplishment. The other thing that I've taken on from the beginning, of course, this is not new for me. I've been working on the homeless situation for many years, from the bottom up primarily. Now I have more of a top-down view of how to address that. And you mentioned that we set up a shelter, but that's a very temporary shelter. This time next year, it will be shut down. And so I'm working very hard right now with the various stakeholders, and there are a lot of them. My attitude right now is we have like 25 agencies that address this in this area. And so we have discussions about whether or not what's called the Housing First initiative is the best way to approach this. And we're having discussions about that. And, is it just a matter of a housing, or do you also have to address addiction and mental health? And so I'm trying to engage some of the people at the county who deal primarily with mental health. And then, of course, addiction services are kind of across the board. So I'm very engaged in that. And if we can find, I don't think there's any question that we have proven that by this temporary shelter, that having a place where people can go and not be too challenged at first, but where there are services available for them to, address their addictions or their mental health issues, because a lot of them have those, and help them to move forward. That's the solution that I can get behind. And so that's what what we're working on. Something more permanent though than what we currently have.
So the adult shelter is closing down?
Well, the shelter is only guaranteed until this time next year. The way that it was set up was to basically prove that something like that can work, which it has. Yes, but it was only set up temporarily. Now, would it? So we're kind of under the gun to provide that. Again, a lot of people are confused about what's called Code Blue and what we're calling a low barrier shelter, which is Adelphi Street. Those are two totally separate things. Yes, and a lot of people don't understand that. And the Code Blue has been something the county has been responsible for a number of years now, and is every year challenged to find a place to have that. And that is just for the winter to keep people from freezing to death, give them a place that's warm. But the low barrier shelter that we're talking about here is much more than that. It's a safe place that people who are unhoused, usually unhoused, or obviously unhoused, and they can get a cot there. But also there are services there. There's management there that can help direct them to places where they can recover from whatever it is that caused them to be homeless. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, John, on that note, we participated in this collaborative to end homelessness just before COVID hit. And it was kind of all the stakeholders who have a hand in helping the unhoused. And we were all together. And one of my big takeaways from that experience was someone who is unhoused and needs to connect with services, whether it's mental health and addiction services, or it's, temporary housing services, et cetera, the process of getting to Ballston Spa and getting to the county and connecting with those services, there's so many roadblocks in between the person who is unhoused and connecting with those services that it seemed to me and the group I was with that having a low barrier shelter with a navigation center kind of connected to it would be really the ultimate solution, which is what you're talking about to an extent.
Yes, I mean yes. So I say a safe place that they can go, but where services are available to them to move ahead in their life.
So, John, being a year out from that shelter closing, is it your hopes to try to extend the life of where it is now, to try to move it? Where do you see the population in a year from now who's living in that shelter?
Well, okay, so I think that's what I'm saying. We're kind of under the gun and we only have a year. We need a year to address this. So in the very near future, we have to come up with some kind of an alternative to that place. And while there is money available to build, the big problem, of course, is where. The homeless task force has provided like 4 different spots that we're constantly looking at, but as time goes by, other spots might become available that might be better location. But location is obviously a big problem. But what I'm working on right now is the money and plans for what it is we want to make. And one of the primary questions is whether or not Code Blue and this safe shelter that I'm talking about should be combined, which would allow some of the county money to come into it. The other question is whether or not Code Blue might be better in another location, separate location. Again, you have to remember, Code Blue is a county type thing, and our low barrier shelter or our safe spot that I'm talking about is a city initiative.
Although the Code Blue has basically exclusively been run by Shelters of Saratoga, And I know they're compensated by the county, but it's always been located within the city of Saratoga Springs.
That's
So
correct.
it would, though, kind of make some logical sense to spread out the two shelters and not have them both located in the city of Saratoga Springs when we know they're serving a larger population geographically.
That's correct. The Code Blue is a county initiative that has been contracted. It comes through the state, and it's the mandate, and it's been contracted to shelters, and they've been functioning under that for quite a while. But it's managed by shelters, as you know. The low barrier, or I don't like that term. That's why I'm trying to find a safe place for unhoused to be with services is the model that you see on Adelphi Street, which has been managed by RISE. Now, RISE generally is not in that kind of management business. They're housing. They're primarily a housing and mental and addiction services. Which, by the way, I think it's important also to understand that through RISE, we have, with Judge Francine Bureau here, we have an outreach court where instead of incarcerating someone who's been ticketed, they can go to RISE and get services. And RISE has been very good at providing reports and progress reports and that sort of thing for those individuals. And what I'm primarily talking about there are the 10, 15, 30 people that we often see by the garage or hanging out in downtown. Those, a lot of people think that that is the homeless. But they're the more chronic homeless that often, need to be motivated to change. And that's something that we're trying to do through that outreach court that Judge Vero runs. But there are about 200 people that come through homelessness in the county that you never hear about. For example, domestic violence is... And you don't hear about Wellspring that much, but they're in the business of helping women and children in that situation get into housing, and you don't hear that much about it. And there are a number of other services like Captain and a number of others that are helping children. There are a number of kids in high school who couch surf, every night, and there are services to help them. But what I'm saying is that there is a whole kind of hidden homelessness that we never see that are much more amenable to help than the chronic ones that you may see around the city. So you really have to have a strategy to deal with both. And of course, the big motivating factor in the city has been those who are downtown who are
more visible, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, there's laws that kind of protect them to the extent that they have First Amendment rights, sort of, to sit on Broadway.
Right.
And so it's a very tricky thing. And as you know, Commissioner Cole has implemented. We have 2 officers now that are downtown and get to know them.
Yeah.
And one of the initiatives we're working on is to see if we can put either a peer, I don't know if you know about the peer program, or a social worker to walk with them.
Yeah.
So that, we can try to bring services, because a lot of those people who are out on the street are pretty chronic. In other words, they will not change their situation without some encouragement. Yeah, they've lost the ability to move ahead on their own. So that's something that we're working on right now. Commissioner Cole has done exactly what he promised he would do. And of course myself, and that is safety downtown. So we're working on a number of issues and initiatives to bring that downtown.
I do think, though, I just want to interrupt for a moment, that you do make such a good point that the vast majority of our unhoused population is unseen. And I live downtown, and I would bet you 95% of Saratogians have no idea that the block I live on has an emergency shelter for women and children in, domestic violence situations. That is just, quietly exists on our block. And, those are not the faces and people I think people are thinking of when they think of the unhoused population. But I have to say, it's hard for me sometimes to listen to public comment over the last couple of weeks, because there seems to be a kind of a small but vocal group who think that the city has just done nothing for our unhoused population and are really angry at their perceived kind of lack of effort by the city to help, our most vulnerable population, in my opinion. And I find that to be extremely frustrating, because I think, if anything, Saratoga Springs has been extremely committed and working very hard with effort and money to try to address this problem in the most comprehensive way possible. So it's got to be a little bit challenging on your end to hear that kind of criticism, knowing all these kind of moving pieces that are happening. How many people are trying to address this?
Yes, well, I think what is good to know is that it's much larger population than what you see, and those who want to be helped are being helped. There's a lot that goes on that you don't see that are working on housing people, and they're moving forward, and they're doing all the things that we would hope that they would do. But what we end up concentrating on are kind of the chronic or the professional, I think of them as almost, I used to run the breakfast program at the Salvation Army a number of years ago. And you have to admire some of these. They're very entrepreneurial. The real chronic ones. But I don't know if, again, Commissioner Cole has been trying to find one of the worst things that we can do with the really chronic homeless, the professional homeless is what I think of them as, is give them money. We had those boxes at one time, and that was working really pretty well, and it was supporting these agencies, and then they got robbed, and Commissioner Cole is trying to look at a QR code type of way to give money and encourage people not to give money to these. There's only 25, 30 that do it almost. They make a lot of money. And, they have no incentive to change their life as long as they can do that.
I do think there needs to be like a public awareness campaign about panhandling, and that it is the most detrimental thing to give to someone who's panhandling. It doesn't help them, and it doesn't help, lessen the amount of panhandlers. And so I think a little bit of a public awareness campaign could be very helpful there. But there's so many things I want to talk to you about, and I want to take a little bit of a left turn, if you don't mind.
Sure.
There was a really big vote last night at the city council, which was to implement a seasonal paid parking program, which for anyone who knows the history of Saratoga Springs knows that paid parking has been one of the longest running, most controversial issues in Saratoga's history. And so the fact that this was voted on last night and is going to be implemented is really huge. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I know you voted in favor of it.
Yes, I did. And that was not an easy decision, particularly because I'm so much in support of downtown business. And it was a lot of the downtown business people who, have come out against it, basically out of fear that it will lose money. That it will cause people not to come downtown. And certainly that's a possibility. So this was not an easy decision for me, but I do think that with paid parking, we're going to have attendance. And again, you have to remember that the paid parking is only during the 3 month, 3.5, whatever, between Memorial Day and Labor Day. The question is whether or not it will produce revenue. And for me, having more safety in those garages, I know a lot of people who will not go in those garages because they are fearful. And obviously, the Woodlawn garages, and actually all of the garages at some point, you don't see them all the time, have been havens for this chronic homeless population that we're talking about. And so this will bring revenue so that those parking garages can be much safer and have an attendant there. So I think that as far as people coming from out of town, and coming and using those, we can make them feel a lot safer in those garages. The other thing is, as you know,
Mayor, safety will come from so I understand the idea that parking garages safer, but there will be an attendant there 24 a day.
My understanding, again, that is my understanding. There will also be better lighting and better cameras. That is my understanding. Again, you have to have the revenue to do this. But the other thing, and again, this is something that I've been pressing Commissioner Golub to make sure that he agrees that if this is successful, that a large portion of that is going to go, because I am convinced now we need this safe, 24-hour safe place for homeless people in our city. Similar to what we currently have, something like that where people can feel safe. We really don't have a revenue stream for that right now. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul here to do this. And if we're going to do this right, we have to have some source of revenue to actually pay for it without having to raise taxes to do it. And so so that's why I voted. I voted for this because there's a lot of controversy with regard to how much it might generate, what its real expenses. The only way we're going to find that out is to do it. And if we can get this, it's a big lift. But Mike and the whole crew there are pretty convinced that they can get this done so that this coming season, we'll get some real numbers and we'll know what it really is. The other thing that I'm convinced of, I've come to trust that Commissioner Golub is practical.
Yes.
And is willing to make changes, to accommodate what we're trying to accomplish. And so I trust that he's going to continue to do that with this program. So that's why I voted for it.
Well, we have a comment from our co-host, actually, who says, I'm actually happy it was a 5-0 rather than a 3-2 vote. I had my concerns, but decisions have been made, and now we need to support it and hope for positive results, financial and other metrics. And he says, regardless of one's position on the issue, this demonstrated the city council can function and get things done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the way it goes right back to what I said. I mean, we have a commission form of government. And if it's going to work, the individuals, the mayor's not the dictator.
No, unfortunately, sometimes.
Right. And sometimes people think that's the way it works, but it doesn't. The mayor has one function, and that is to be the chairman of the meeting. Yep. And so at any rate, it goes right back to what I was telling you at the beginning. I am bending over backwards to make that commission form of government work here for the people. And that's what you're seeing.
You really hit the nail on the head, because the pitfall is communication. It's allowing yourself to be siloed within your department, because as you know, you can only talk to one person at a time. You can't have 3 people in a room. So, but if you know that going in, all you need to do is concentrate on making those communicative efforts and, not falling victim to the commission form of government, which, just has that one pitfall of siloing people if they allow themselves to be siloed. So I think your efforts have been, you can sense all the efforts that you've been making based on the city council and how it's been operating. For sure.
Yeah. So that's why I say I knew what I was getting into, and I knew how different it was from, most of my business experience. And,
now,
I've had to learn a lot about, but,
How do you think the short-term rental regulation is going to turn out? I know that's been another issue that there have been a couple hearings on. It's been fairly controversial.
Yes, Commissioner Gola or Commissioner Moran is not the same personality as Commissioner Golub, but is someone who has been driven to try and find a solution to this. And I respect that. I'm grateful that we've been able to talk and that he has modified. And of course, we've been listening, obviously, to the feedback at our meetings, and he has again become quite more flexible to try and expand this program so that it isn't quite as rigid as it was in the beginning. I am in favor of this for a couple of reasons. One is to make this work, we have to create a database that we don't have right now. And being a computer background and data type person, one of the things we desperately need in City Hall is a shared database, which is what this is creating. And I've told Commissioner Golub, even if this wasn't successful, that database is worth all the effort that we're going through right now to create, because it will make it so. You have to remember, with 5 silos, you have 5 databases. This is a database that will tie together all the building department, at least, and the commission or the accounts department. So I'm very much in favor of that. The other side of it, something has to be done about short-term rentals. Obviously, we were talking last night. The state is going to come out with their own program, and whether or not it's better for us to give them that data, or whether they're going to have to register with the state, is a real question. But I am generally in favor of regulation because, obviously you have people who don't want any. This is historically a town that rents their homes. 100 years we've been doing that. And we need it. We need the rooms. The argument that we have 2,000 rooms and there's 30,000 people that come here. You have to. They have to stay someplace. And Airbnb type of programs can be helpful in that area, as long as the owners of those rentals care about their neighbors. That's the biggest question that comes up. If you have just people who don't care about their neighbors and aren't willing to monitor the activities of their renters, that is a serious problem. And so that's why you need to have something that can deal with that kind of a problem. So I'm generally in favor of it. I definitely am in favor of the database. And so we'll see where it goes. I mean, again, the commissioner's working very hard to try and come up with something that's fair.
I know there's been a lot of kind of immediate pushback on the $1,000 registration fee. Is that something you're hoping to see come down a little bit?
Well, I mean, the first time I talked with him, he moved it from a fixed, part of the legislation and put it into the fee schedule. And right now, he's already modifying some of that. This will come out with it. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm impressed with his willingness to modify things. He can be hard-headed sometimes, but he's willing to try and work with us to come up with something that that's fair. Yeah, so you'll see some modification in that area.
Well, and it is an incredibly, again, I commend you all because you're taking on some of the most challenging and complex issues that face the city, from paid parking, short-term rentals, our unhoused population. These are not easy issues. So I commend all of you for trying to, come up with solutions, Commissioner Moran included. And I definitely appreciate the flexibility in terms of receiving public feedback. So I'll be interested to see how the short-term regulation ends up. Certainly.
Yeah, well, me too. Me too. So I thought we were going to do 15 minutes. We've done like 40.
I know.
We have another appointment here.
We've taken up so much of your time. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it, Mayor Safford. I hope we will see you again and get another update from you in another couple of weeks or a few months. But we really appreciate your time today.
Okay, great. Thanks. Nice time. Always. Yeah. And you can tell Dan, I now every morning get up and look at the Saratoga report.
Oh, you will love that.
I know he will, but he just does such a great job, getting all the various things on there. So I just really like it, and I think other people, if they try it, they're going to like it too.
We agree. We're going to keep him around a little while longer. He does a great job.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mayor Safford. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, Adam.
All right, but boy, what a fresh demeanor he has. Huh? I mean, it's just it's very empathetic and light, and like he was saying, bringing civility. Even though we're a commission form of government, it starts with the top down, and I think he is as civil as a mayor as we've had in a while. So
yeah, and I feel like people can campaign on civility and think they're going to act a certain way in office, but then they get in office and they turn into like a monster. And he has just, walked the line so well and really stayed true to his campaign promises and who he is. He's so sincere. It's really refreshing.
Yeah, halfway through that, it's a different time. We're in a different time zone, and I screwed that up. So I was rushing to do this, and I quickly turned my phone on so we could go live. And I was sitting there, my whole left leg was falling asleep, so I had to do a kind of a mid interview switch. But this way, you get the ocean in anyway. So
I know the ocean's looking mighty good. I got to tell you. So can I give you a quick update on the city council meeting last night?
Let's do it. Let's hear about it.
So, I mean, we kind of covered it a little bit. It wasn't that extensive. Essentially, the first public hearing was for the paid parking proposal. And there were about 17 to 19 speakers, I want to say, who came out to public comment at the hearing. And I actually I tallied it up. I think about 12 were opposed, 5 were in favor, and then the other 3 or 4 were kind of like neutral. But everyone who spoke was obviously very impassioned. And then later that evening, they did go and vote on the paid parking proposal, and it was voted, in 5-0, which I thought was actually really surprising considering what a controversial issue it is. Like I guess pleasantly surprised, I suppose, by the consensus of the group. It does make things easier when there's that kind of consensus, but I'm curious to see if this program fails or succeeds this summer.
Yeah. We had the owner of Saratoga Outfitter on a couple of weeks ago. And,
correct, John.
Fortunately, anytime something like there are going to be winners, and I don't want to say losers, but people who things like this are going to face challenges. And something he said when the parking lot next to the Algonquin building, I used to always park there and run over to those shops located near that. And he lost that to paid parking. And now his streets, and now Broadway is going to be paid parking. And you feel for the shop owners. But as the whole, as the city's moving forward, I think it is the right call. And I agree with you. Seeing both Democrat, it's not a Democrat or a Republican thing or a conservative or liberal. it's just, you had the 4 commissioners and the mayor get together and say, hard decision to be made, but this is what's best for our city. So we'll see how it goes this summer.
I do have this fear that they're going to get a taste of the revenue. And if it's anything what they want it to be, they're going to increase the paid parking situation because the revenue is going to be too enticing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, slippery slope, right? So
yeah,
they'll have the infrastructure in place, and that 3 months, given cash crunch, will start to expand out. But they raise taxes in 2 years, so we'll.
I know. And then personal gripe, I was like, I shouldn't have an opinion on this because I live literally, I can somersault downtown. I live so close to downtown. I'm on Caroline Street between Circular and Henry. But it just occurred to me that basically I suspect my block is going to be jam-packed with cars this summer because everyone who's avoiding parking in the garages is going to park on all these side streets. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. So that's a great point, Robin. I know this has been a lot of iterations of this, but the paid parking is going to be on Broadway and the garages.
Not Broadway. Not on Broadway, just in the garages and the flat lots.
I got you. Okay, so only. All right. I did not know that. So the street parking is still going to be however it is regulated now. It's going to be the flat lots are going to have. You're going to get in. Do we know? Is it going to be like an app system? I would imagine.
I think there's going to be an app. You know what? I kind of lost track of that because they were talking about the paid parking stations. There's going to be kind of muni meter things, but they're going to remove them during the winter because of plowing. I think there's going to be an app so you can check to see how much time is left on your spot.
Gotcha.
That's my understanding. And it's going to be $2, but I don't know how long that $2 gets you in terms of a time, if that gets you 8 hours, 2 hours, 4 hours, I have no idea.
So other business, were there more? I missed city council meeting last night. Yeah.
So then there was the public hearing for the short-term rental regulation has remained open, which I do credit Commissioner Moran for keeping the public hearing open because there's still a lot of people coming out to talk about it and express their opinion. And he's continued to keep the public hearing open so he can listen and adjust accordingly. So there was that. There was also a public hearing on Van Dam and the truck traffic on Van Dam, because you actually probably know more about this than I do, but basically the DOT walked back the city council's initial vote to limit the truck traffic on Van Dam.
Yeah.
So they had.
So that's exactly right. Is the DOT essentially said there's been a lot of, and none of this is black. I mean, it's black and white, but there are a lot of shades of gray of the state essentially and DOT saying to the city that you can't put limits on this road right here for truck traffic. And there's a very impassioned neighborhood group, something my family's involved with. I'm involved with a little bit because you don't realize it until you live on that street, but just the sheer amount of tractor trailers that are coming through that street. And it's the belief is a lot of these tractor trailers are essentially using Saratoga as a shortcut. They're cutting, and that's I think the big issue is that we shouldn't be a shortcut. We have a state interstate system. Keep the trucks on the state interstate system. So I know they're really working to find a solution. And again, that's one of those issues where it's not if there was an easy solution, it would have been implemented already.
Exactly. So aside from that, I'm just scrolling through the agenda. So we have the 3 public hearings and then oh, you know what? There was an announcement from the mayor about a settlement in the Marilyn Rivers case. So Marilyn Rivers was the director of risk and safety for the city for many, many years. I worked with her when I was on the city council. She was incredible. She really did an amazing job at being the director of risk and safety. She left, she retired, but also sued the city for a hostile work environment under Ron Kim's administration. And long story short, they have settled that case. And the mayor made that announcement last night at the city council meeting. The Times Union reported, I believe, that they settled it for $100,000. That was the settlement. There was no financial sum or figure disclosed last night, though, at the meeting. They just said that they had reached a settlement in the case. So personally, I'm really happy for Marilyn. I hope she gets all her money and more, because I never doubted the veracity of her claims. I felt that she had a strong case of, the accusations she had made about the work environment she was in and really kind of being forced out. So I think it ended the way it should have ended. I mean, it should have ended with her retiring on her own terms and no lawsuits, but I'm glad the lawsuit was settled and she's getting some compensation.
Yeah, not a great look for our previous administration to be trading. That's that hostile to work for, but also that costs the city that much money. But anyway, on that note, I have to hop off shortly.
All right, my friend. Well, we're almost at an hour anyway, and to be honest, there wasn't a whole ton of other big time activity at the meeting last night. We kind of hit the highlights. So, all we have is cheers and jeers, and I can do a quick cheer and jeer. Cheering for you for being on today from the beach, and I'm jeering Dan for not making it.
Yeah, Dan. What's up, Dan? Anyway, I'll cheer Mayor Safford. Thanks for coming on, and again, just I think his demeanor is well needed right now in our city. So anyway, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
I think we'll be back next week.
We'll be back next week. That's right. We'll be back
next Wednesday. Follow us on what's that?
Smash the like button, share with your friends.
Yes, share, click, like, follow, whatever, all the things. And breaking news, Robin, the Bills traded Stephon Diggs. Actually, Alice Dalton had already told me that, Dan. All right. Over and out, my friend.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.